What's going on, guys? Disorderly Product News. Today, we're going to talk about how long can a citizen be detained on a traffic stop. Now, there's a lot of rumor, innuendo. We're going to get down to brass tacks and tell you the truth on Disorderly Product News. But first, we got to get right and cue the music. I think most of us, if not all of us, can relate to being pulled over by law enforcement for a traffic infraction. It's a big problem in the United States. And we're going to break down how long police officers can keep you detained at a traffic stop, because there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we're going to cut to the core. We're going to boil it down to its least common denominator, and we're going to make it so everybody and anybody can understand it. We're going to cut away all the rubbish and the garbage. First, let's get a foundation. This report came out from the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is a federal department that oversees law enforcement's activities and makes sure they are operating within the Constitution, the parameters of the Constitution, the parameters of Supreme Court rulings. Cities like Chicago and Baltimore are presently under a federal consent decree. They were audited by the Department of Justice, and the findings came back that they were not following the Constitution. Cities like St. Louis and New Orleans have previously been under federal consent decrees. Here, the Department of Justice breaks down all interactions between police and citizens in the year of 2018. Every single interaction on file. 28.9 million of those were police-initiated contacts with citizens, traffic stops, suspicious activities, etc. 35.5 million were citizen-initiated contacts with police, 911 calls, needing directions. So that's a breakdown of how the interactions came apart. Did the police initiate it, or did the civilian initiate it? Now, it's only 6.5 million difference between police-initiated contacts and civilian. We used to call police in this country public servants, peace officers. We now call them law enforcement. What's the difference? A public servant is supposed to look out for you, your rights, make sure you're safe, you're okay. Law enforcement, police were never meant to be a revenue-generating system. Once they became one, they became law enforcement. They're enforcing laws upon you. If you don't believe me, next time you're at a stoplight and a police officer pulls behind you, ask yourself, do you feel more or less safe? This is such a well-done, intricate, detailed report that I couldn't possibly go through all of it. And it's not what this video is about, but I'll leave it at the end so you guys can look, because it is really, really interesting. Now, this article is from the Barry Law Group, B-A-R-R-Y. How long can police detain me to conduct a search? Imagine that you are driving down the interstate and you are pulled over for a routine traffic stop. You are held by the police for 45 minutes while the officer calls in another patrol car with a drug-sniffing dog. While walking around your vehicle, the dog indicates to the odor of narcotics, leading to a full search of your entire car. The officers then uncover evidence of a crime and arrest you. Is this permissible under the Fourth Amendment? When pulling motorists over for traffic stops, police must conduct their actions in a timely and justifiable manner. Law enforcement doesn't have to rush through each stop, but the use of unnecessary delays as a means to establish reasonable suspicion for a search may result in such evidence being suppressed, ruled inadmissible in court of law. Issues surrounding interstate searches and seizures are common in state and federal courts across the country. These cases are often revolve around the concept of reasonable suspicion. The police cannot hold you indefinitely until they gather evidence against you. Law enforcement must have reasonable suspicion of your consent to search your vehicle. The courts have found repeatedly that being held solely for the purpose of establishing evidence despite a lack of probable cause is unconstitutional. Anything found in a search after that can be and will be suppressed in court. Now, here's the case law giving you a pretty detailed amount of time: 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Rodriguez versus the United States, 2015. In this case, the defendant was detained for 7 to 8 minutes until a second officer arrived with a dog that alerted to the presence of drugs. The court ruled that the defendant's constitutional right against unreasonable seizure had been violated, and such a detention was inadmissible in the absence of reasonable suspicion. Now, I'll tell you why, and it'll make perfect sense to you. You're pulled over for a traffic violation. Anything inside the car where they believe drugs, that's not within the scope of this stop. So, if they're not writing you a ticket, they can no longer hold you because the infraction was rolling through a stop sign, going through a red light. That is the probable cause they are holding you on. So if they're not writing you a ticket for that, they have no other reason to detain you. You have to be let go. They cannot detain you and wait for a dog to come. You're not being detained for that. They don't have reasonable suspicion for that. And we know that because they're not searching your vehicle. If they had probable cause for that, if that was in the scope of the stop, they will be searching your vehicle. Instead, they asked you, you said no, time to go, unless they're writing tickets. But they cannot just keep you there for a dog because they have no reasonable suspicion on those grounds. Does that make sense? So in this one, it gives us no idea on how long a traffic stop can take. 7 to 8 minutes is how long they held them extra. So basically, it comes down to this. As long as they're writing tickets and they're in the action of that exact stop and the dog shows up within that time frame, the dog can be run around the car. The next case regarding how long a traffic stop can be is United States versus Cornejo. In this case, the court held a search to be unconstitutional because the defendant was detained for more than 25 minutes while law enforcement claimed to be checking the validity of the defendant's driver's license. During those 25 minutes, a drug dog was brought to the scene and indicated to the presence of narcotics. The court held that the deputies in this case unnecessarily prolonged the stop to ask unrelated questions and conduct a canine sniff of the sedan without the constitutionally required independent reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Basically, they drugged their feet and acted like they were investigating something just for the dog to get there. The next one is the United States versus Gordon. In this case, an officer initiated a traffic stop with the defendant for following too closely. Despite all initial paperwork and background information checking out and a lack of reasonable suspicion being present, the officer still proceeded to call for backup. 29 minutes into the stop, the backup officer found a firearm in a passenger purse. The officers detained Gordon to conduct a canine sniff, but no other contraband was found. The court held the nearly 30-minute gap between the officer obtaining necessary information to issue a ticket, Gordon's license and registration, and the discovery of the firearm, along with statements captured on video, revealed the officer's intention to discover other crimes despite the absence of reasonable suspicion. Evidence of the firearm was suppressed in the government's case against the defendant. So in this one, he's going outside of his scope. He's writing him a ticket for license and registration. Nothing to do with a gun, drugs, any of that. That was in the scope of his stop, but yet he still made him stay there for 30 minutes until another officer can come. They found a gun and charged him with it. But you can't do that. You stopped me for going through a stop sign, in this case, registration, whatever. That's what needs to be held to. If you ask me to search my car, I don't give you consent. We're not waiting around for Lassie. You don't got me on that. Now, if you saw me waving a gun around in the air in the car for some reason, or you saw me doing something illegal that he met the elements for looking for a gun or other contraband, then yeah. But not for you don't get to write me a ticket for rolling through a stop sign and then stay there all day so you can look for a gun or a bag of marijuana. And that's not how it works. So the answer to how long you can be held at a traffic stop is this. There is no specific time. It's situational specific. It's situational specific to the elements of your exact traffic stop. Now, it has to be reasonable. So, if the police officer comes over to your car, he asks for your ID, he says you ran a stop sign, then he goes into where were you going, what do you do, and you say, I'd rather not talk about my day. And then he says, can I search your car? And you say no. Now, if he goes back to his car and writes you 2 tickets and comes back 45 minutes later, that's unreasonable. It doesn't take somebody 45 minutes to write 2 tickets. The judge in your case, if you present it right, if you communicate right, and all things are fair, should throw that out. Okay? It has to be reasonable. You write 1 ticket. You're not answering any questions. But if you're sitting there and talking to him for 20 minutes and answering his questions freely of your own volition, and then he goes back and writes your traffic tickets and he writes you 2 or 3 of them and comes back 10, 15 minutes later, well, that's all good because you kept him there talking to him before he could go back to his car and write the tickets. So the best measure is, I would rather not talk about my day. I do not consent. Now the conversation's over. Go write the tickets. It should take you 10 to 12, 15 minutes to write those tickets. If it takes any longer, if it's an exuberated amount of time, that's illegal. So around 20 minutes is what they say, given that it's a traffic infraction, you don't want to answer any questions, you don't consent to a search, he goes and writes the tickets. So that's what it is, guys. It's situational specific. Remember, record the police, don't answer questions, don't consent to searches, and fight your tickets in the court of law. Because you can beat the case, you can't beat the ride. There are no sidewalk judges. I'm Disorderly Product News. And I want you guys to watch this video real quick because I put it up yesterday, and it's how to do it yourself home security system. And it's only 2 minutes long. I suggest you watch it. It's an idea I came up with in my head the other day, or last night. And I'll show you that Department of Justice report. So the guys that want to read it can read it. The girls that want to read it can read it. And again, my name is Disorderly Product News. Good night.